All right, so let's go over the fiction essay for 102. First and foremost, let's look at the due dates. Remember, if you're watching this in an online class, your due dates may be slightly different. The introduction, thesis, and paper outline are due in Canvas at the start of class, a month from today, as a matter of fact. And that is going to be on a Monday. I do want you guys to bring your introduction and outline to class so we can do a little workshop on them in class. So that's due at the start of class as opposed to 11:59 p.m. And then the final draft will be due in Canvas on March 22nd, which is the last day we meet before the spring holiday. Alrighty, here is the assignment. The short story writer Amy Hempel once said, short stories are about what a character wants and what he or she is willing to go through to get it. I know she said that because I attended that particular reading, but she says it often when she does talks. Many short fiction pieces revolve around this notion and characters' desires. With this in mind, write a 1,350 to 1,700 word essay. We are actually bumping up the word count for this essay. About how a character or character's desires is or are presented and dealt with in one of the short stories that we have read in the fiction unit. So in other words, we're going to be taking a look at how the things people want affect their decisions, how it affects their personality, how it affects what happens to them in a story, and now how it affects the character change that they go through. The protagonist in a short story is going to experience a character change of some sort. Okay, the protagonist in a short story is going to experience a character change of some sort. It may be an epiphany, a sudden realization. It may be more subtle. You guys, for the More Than One Genre quiz, read the short story by Shirley Jackson, The Lottery. Tessie Hutchinson definitely goes through a change. Is it a change in her character? Not completely, but certainly she becomes the focus of the story because she's the one that gets stoned to death. Okay. Questions before I move on? All right. Now, your final paper should offer a complete and detailed literary analysis focusing on your text treatment of desire. What is the narrator's attitude toward the character's desires? What about the protagonist or antagonist? Now, true or false, the antagonist is a person in a short story.
It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be. The way that it's defined is a antagonist can be a person or force that is acting against the protagonist. What does he or she want, and how does it affect the story? What does the text seem to be saying about desire and how human beings should deal with it? What kind of desires are present in this story? Are they sexual desires? Are they monetary desires? Is it something else? And one of the stories you guys are going to read for next class, The Things They Carried, there's a lot of desires that go on between the characters. But the protagonist, Lieutenant Jimmy Cross, his desire is primarily sexual, or at least driven by admiration or love. You may use any literary device to make your arguments, such as character, language, image, symbolism, plot, etc. But you should not simply identify the way your text presents desire, but also explore the significance of this attitude toward desires in the story as a whole. One good way to think about it is, after you kind of brainstorm ideas for how desire affects the story, do that thing that you guys read about in the early part of class, where you can challenge your ideas. And by challenging them, what you might do is say, okay, let's say this character, instead of desiring to love this other character, rather hates this other character. How does that change the story? Flip the desires 180 degrees and see how the story is different. That's going to reveal a lot about its significance to the story as a whole. You are to assume that your reader has read the text already, and therefore you do not need to include any plot summary in your analysis. At all costs, and notice this is in bold, avoid writing the book report essay that is nothing but a plot summary and has no analysis of the text. Go in the Alabama Virtual Library, go to EBSCO, go to the Literary Resource Center, go to Academic OneFile. See what the analytical essays about your work do. How are they written? You'll notice that they will talk about the things that happen in the story, but more often than not, they don't summarize the story. Sometimes a literary encyclopedia and things like that, they'll have a quick plot summary before they get into analysis, but it's the analysis that we should be focusing on in this paper. Okay? This isn't a book report, it's an analysis of desire in the story you choose. There's an article on Canvas that discusses the differences between analysis and summary, and that's the case for the Canvas supplement to this class. Questions? Okay. You must use at least 3 valid outside sources or secondary materials. Valid sources include articles in literary journals, essays written by reliable sources, and books that analyze the work or author. Remember, you cannot use the dictionary as one of the minimum. You can use the dictionary in your paper, but it won't count as one of your 3 minimum sources. However, the primary focus in this paper should be your thoughtful analysis and close reading of the story you choose. The experts are there to back up your opinion, not to make your argument. And the best way to help yourself do this is to write kind of a skeleton outline before you do any research. Pick the story you want to write about, write a short outline, or at least brainstorm ideas of how you think desire functions in the story, and then you can go into your research focused on what you need to get, what information you need to get to prove your points. Okay, that's the best way to proceed on any of these papers, because that's going to help you keep the paper focused on backing up your ideas, or the research focused on backing up your ideas and not vice versa. You don't want the research to replace your ideas. Our class discussion of these works will help you in your analysis. I expect your paper to be your own unique analysis and not a recitation of class discussions. Certainly stuff that or issues or things that we discussed in class may come up as part of your essay, but they should not replace anything in that essay, okay? Not replace. What I mean there is you shouldn't just regurgitate your notes on a class discussion about a story. Sorry about that. That was a little unclear. Okay, questions on that? I don't mean that to be an awkward silence. The research would indicate that it takes about 7 seconds for a student to digest what I just said, think of their own question, and then ask it. So I'm not trying to have an awkward pause. I'm trying to give your brains a chance to ask questions should they arise. Okay, let's get to the requirements. You should begin with an interesting and informative title, make a clear and concise claim, have a focused thesis that is underlined. I would prefer, if you've already turned in your poetry essay, don't worry about it, but I would prefer with your poetry essay that you underline your thesis. Explain what a character or characters want and how it affects the story. Offer a variety of reasons to support your claim. Use evidence from the text to support your claim. Use ideas from at least 3 secondary sources. Don't forget to cite the primary source, so you'll have 4 total sources on the works cited page at minimum. Needs to be carefully argued and clearly written. Uses diction and style appropriate to a formal essay. Free of grammatical and mechanical errors. Double space in Times New Roman 12-point font. That includes your last name and page number in the upper right. You should be able to go to the header and just select all and turn it into Times New Roman 12-point font. And a good note with your poetry essay. If it's not formatted correctly, I will just send you a note saying your paper's late until it's formatted correctly. That sample poetry essay that's available both in Canvas and in this class that I handed out gives you a guide on how to format your essay properly using MLA documentation. Another thing, make sure you're using the MLA 8th edition, not the 7th. Some sites like SiteNight and EasyBib and places like that, they're still using the 7th edition, which means that your citations are going to be wrong on the last page. I sent a link to the Al Purdue website, how to cite sources correctly using the MLA 8th edition. I do suggest that you use that link. Needs to be written in the third person. And this is for the poetry essay too, just as a reminder. I think, I feel, I believe, I'm writing about, this essay will be about, all that garbage, out. Needs to be written in the third person, okay? So I, me, we, us, our needs to be eliminated from your paper unless you're quoting somebody else. And especially get rid of the second person because in the poetry essay, let's see, out of the 45 points that you can get for grammar and mechanics, it would automatically be dropped to a 28 if you use the second person in your poetry essay. So I'm not kidding when I say you have to get rid of the second person, unless it's in a quote, of course. Questions on that? Okay, and in a minute I'll show you guys how you can, an easy way to find any of the second person. Be at least, it should say 1,350 words. We are bumping up the word count for the fiction essay, yes. It's the 1,200 for poetry, but not fiction. All right, any final questions before we take a quick look at the rubric? Okay, grading rubric. This is the standard rubric. Actually, it's being used across coastal Alabama. I developed it, so I'm kind of proud of it. Well, I didn't necessarily completely develop it, but the edition you see here is the one that we adapted, which I did develop. Notice that your biggest grades are on content and grammar and mechanics. So make sure that you have good ideas and that you proofread your papers and also are doing the citation stuff correctly. Okay? All right, any final questions? Okay, let me show